Hello, hello. How y'all doing today?
Oi.
Oi.
Hello.
How's it going, THOReau? How's it doing, Kyle?
Yo, man, what's up? They added like some new sound effects to the Spaces. You guys notice that?
The other day? I'm just waiting for them to add like browser support where I can actually do this thing, in browser rather than on my phone.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I know that's the stupidest thing.
But yeah, I hear what you mean. It's like when you accept a speaker comes up, there's like a little sound.
Yeah, so they're releasing like a bunch of cool new features and stuff. Like they're trying to do a lot more like podcasting stuff on the Twitter app. So like hopefully that just makes the user experience for listening to recording to this better. What the fuck is
So there's a new soundboard feature where you can just like hit a button like a shock jock.
Wait, what? Where is this, mate? Where is this?
Hit the little like magic wand icon on the bottom, and there's two tabs. One's the soundboard and one's the voice.
Oh shoot! Maybe I need to update. I just see the voice transformer. Oh my god, this is gonna be way too much fun.
Obnoxious. This is gonna be obnoxious as hell.
We'll become a pro at using this. Don't worry. What if we could put our own custom sounds? That would be epic. We could get
that would be crazy.
We could get a bunch of like THORChain themed sounds made and just like play them all the time.
This is ridiculous.
What is going on?
Hello.
It's hilarious.
All right, this is too crazy.
All right, enough.
Is that a Morse code revealing the next chain integration? You have to decode it.
I think that's how it works.
You all right?
All right, guys. Yeah, I'm just fucking about.
It's like, oh shit, that one was real. Like, Chad just fell down the stairs.
Yeah, hilarious. All right, how y'all doing? Enough playtime.
Good. Yeah, excited to go through some more updates. That privacy discussion was a really great listen. I'll get that pinned up, so if anyone hasn't heard that, they can check that out after this. But I'm sure it'll inevitably get brought up again today. But that was a really in-depth discussion on that issue that kind of covered everything.
Yeah. No, I agree. It was a pretty in-depth, and it's on YouTube. We can play. I think it's already maybe we already pinned it at the top here or not, but yeah, that was a really good conversation. 2-hour conversation with myself, mostly myself and Akila, most of them, a bunch of other people then jumped in with questions and comments and things, but it was a good conversation to have. I think one of the big takeaways, at least from my perspective, was that I think largely the community is still for privacy tokens, privacy chains in general. There's a debate about whether or not the timing of which, or what is the list of things a network has to accomplish before it feels it's comfortable to take on private chains. And I think different people have different opinions on what that is. I have my own sense of my opinion what that is, and others have other opinions. I think that's part of the big takeaways, though. But also, I think private chains aren't as threatening as we think. One of the things I was learning just like yesterday or 2 days ago was that the whole sanction on Tornado Cash wasn't some sort of large sweeping effect of the government to take away privacy access or these kind of things, but rather something that the Biden administration, the U.S. Treasury didn't even do it. It actually was a Biden administration just looking for a way to spank North Korea. And they just kind of grabbed this concept off the shelf and just threw it out there without really putting that much thought or consideration to it, sounds like, from what I was learning about the other day. So it's not even like that privacy is all that much in attack, at least in this current moment, based upon what I was learning the other day. So it's not, I don't think we need, I think we're probably overreacting as a community to the severity of the situation. And even if the government did come after THORChain, they wouldn't be able to turn it off. Maybe temporarily turn it off for like a week or two, but the network would come back on a little while later.
Yeah, from some discussions that I've had over the past week, one thing that I'm thinking about that's related to that is just the strength of the THORChain node. So part of that conversation, people are aware of bare metal setups, and that's obviously one good thing about Thor nodes is that you can do that, although that's not currently widely utilized. But the strength of the nodes on THORChain and the geographies and the regions and just the diversity of people running nodes, that's what makes THORChain strong and decentralized. So it's not just running bare metal nodes. It's running them in diverse locations with diverse teams, different stakeholders, just diversifying the who's actually running the network, who's participating, and who's taking a proactive stance to protect their own nodes, who's making backups, who's who's voting for the next change, who's paying attention, who's reviewing the new updates when they come out before they run them on their nodes. So there's a lot of different factors, bare metal being one of them, but the strength of the nodes is really the strength of the network. So I think it's been really interesting. I don't know if people have actually spun up new nodes to make their voice heard and make a vote, but I think that's a really positive outcome that would come out of this, because that means that there's more node operators that care about the network and want decentralization for the network, which is really the goal of the whole the system as a whole. That's how it works. We're only as strong as our nodes. So having strong node operators is really important.
Yeah, I think there's going to be. I mean, I've actually started putting some effort into, and I'm sure other people, and a few other people are as well, of going through the process of building bare metal nodes just for academic purposes, and then documenting that process to some degree. I still don't think you can really document a bare metal node entirely, just because it's the technical requirement is relatively much higher than what an AWS node would be, and it's easy to screw it up and get things wrong and leave some open door on your box that could get exploited and such. And so, and if something goes wrong during the install process, you have to be a Linux savvy person or sysadmin or DevOps person to really understand what's happening, what the problem is, how to fix it, so forth and so on. So I think we're going to have some more documents in the near future around supporting bare metal, but hopefully we can encourage nodes to kind of start moving some of their nodes off of their nodes off of AWS and DigitalOcean and such onto various bare metal nodes, and hopefully do it in a way that's secure and not problematic.
Yeah, I think it was THORChain Bull also talking about just going through the process of migrating a node, say to other countries, things like that. And I think if those things can be documented and kind of laid out, that helps hold hands with the node operators and kind of show them the path to do these things. Whereas right now, like something you've been tweeting a lot about, Chad, is just how the nodes kind of are complacent right now to really do these steps towards more decentralization. I'm sure they care about it, of course, but right now it's well, I have to jump through all these hoops for no immediate benefit really. And so there's a lot of hesitation, but the more that these things are kind of laid out, and just that this is getting more attention now, I'm actually really curious to revisit that vote potentially and things like that. I feel node operators must be kind of waking up to this more, just with this whole debate going on in the last couple of weeks. So getting all this content out, getting now that the conversation's open again, hopefully they'll be more motivated to start moving over.
One thing I learned as part of I've been messing around I haven't messed around with bare metals until just recently, and largely because I haven't built for people. I used to build infrastructure and data centers many years ago, over a decade ago, for a job I used to have, and so I used to do that stuff all the time. But my knowledge is antiquated at this point, for the most part, to be honest with you. So I'm kind of reacquainting myself and kind of learning more. But one thing I kind of realized through the process that I didn't really quite realize myself before, maybe not a lot of node operators know this, is that the cost of operation on bare metal is far, far cheaper than it is running on AWS. An AWS node is going to be around $3,000 a month or so. And if you're on your own bare metal, if you do it monthly, it'd be between $300 and $500 a month to run all the infrastructure you need. And if you just buy your infrastructure, just like literally just buy a server or two, throw it in your basement, like that's going to be maybe $3,000 for like a 1 month payment, and that's it. So it's actually far, far cheaper to run bare metal than it is on AWS, especially now in the context where we're in a bear market, everyone's price is relatively low to what it's been in the past. And so the monthly yield that a node operator is making, right now is approximately around like maybe $10,000 a month. They're spending $3,000 on infrastructure. That's taking out obviously a huge chunk, approximately a third of their revenue, and they could cut that down to like by 10x, like 10x the cost of operation, and spend either $300 or just spend $3,000 like one time and be set for many months potentially. So hopefully node operators will learn this and just by way of financial incentive to choose to move off of cloud providers onto physical hardware.
Yep, and I hope we see.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know it was so much cheaper.
I think that's the biggest thing that could happen is new people that are interested in THORChain, interested in decentralization, interested in privacy, or just interested in this network in general, to get the rune and spin up a node and start and contribute to the decentralization of the network. The only way that we can really get there is by having a diverse group of people that's actually responsible for the network and operating it, and using best practices to get us to where we need to be. So like as much as it is good for the current node operators to do that, and they should be striving to do that. The best way to get there is just by growing the node operator ecosystem and just getting more people behind this whole thing, basically. More regions, more geographies, more just different areas of the world, different jurisdictions. Like that's the way that we decentralize where we need to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we're getting there. And people have to remember that for a multi-chain concept, we are more decentralized than anything else out there by a fuck ton, I would even say, because most other systems out there are just like a 3 to 5 individual people running individual nodes who they're all friends and maybe even running all that infrastructure in the same AWS instance. And so we're actually at least publicly run nodes by anybody in the world across all geographies. And I mean, it's not even comparable.
Yeah, that makes me think of a thought I've been having too on like the privacy debate and everything. And it's like, it's a good thing how paranoid this community is about this stuff, given like how kind of ahead we are in a lot of sense already. Like it just shows how like serious this community kind of takes this stuff, right? Because it's like we're seemingly more concerned with decentralizing than most projects, yet it's already more decentralized than all of those projects. Or something like this privacy thing and like worrying about regulation. It's like we're worrying about a problem that is like most likely very unlikely, even for the people that are so concerned about it. But it's like the thing is just so damn valuable that even if it's a 2% chance or whatever, it's like people are really concerned. And I think that just like shows how in tune with what's going on like this particular community really is. Yeah, this is going to be nice. I like this.
This is going to be it's going to make every Twitter space 10 times more obnoxious. I promise you.
Do you have like special settings or something? I don't see any of that. Whatever.
I think you probably got to update your app, but if you go to the little like magic wand on the bottom and it gives you like 50 different things, you can.
Oh, it just gives me a voice transformer. This is going to be obnoxious. I'm going to play around with this later. Sorry, not on the stream. All right.
Same here. I think I need to update. Maybe we can do a test space after this cow and we can play around.
Yeah. So other than privacy, there's a couple other things. First is the Terra airdrop for affected LPs. So if you were an LP of Terra or UST during the whole thing, we'll just call it that, you can claim the Terra airdrop starting September 4th, going to October 4th. So instructions will be posted for when that happens. If you're an affected LP, just hang tight. And it looks like just the day before Labor Day, that is, if you're in the US, I guess, September 4th, that's when first day to claim the airdrop, and you have a month to do so. So just look out for more info on that. It'll be coming up real soon. All right, next, ADR 004. So this is the newest ADR, the on-chain key share backups. So Chad, you want to explain what this is?
Yeah, so a little background to this. When a validator node exists, it has three different keys that it's running at any given time. One is for the node itself, one is for the consensus of Tendermint itself, and then one is for the threshold signatures and managing the actual external assets to the network, like Bitcoin and Ethereum and such. So the first two are static, meaning that when you first build your node, that those are the keys, and that they are the keys for the lifetime of that node. And there's not even a mechanism to actually change or update those keys later on if you wanted to. If you wanted to update them, the best thing to do is destroy your node and create a new one. But the third key, that does change, and somewhat frequently. It changes every time we do a churn, which happens every 7 days or so. So the idea here is that we want to make sure, and node operators should be doing this already if they're not. Hopefully they are, but we don't definitively know that. We can't know that for certain. But we want to make sure that node operators are backing up those TSS shares, just in case something were to happen, their node got blown up for some reason. Either the operator himself made some mistake and hit the wrong button and destroyed everything by accident, or something on the other side of that spectrum of the U.S. government tells AWS to shut down and kill all the nodes, right? And so and destroys all that data and such. We want to be able to restore the network in that scenario and not actually have any lost funds or anything like this kind of thing. And so by putting it actually onto the chain itself in an encrypted fashion, these TSS shares, they're recoverable downstream by nodes. Every full node, every validator, everybody that's running a copy of that stuff, is all backing up the TSS shares themselves, which are probably going to be triplicate encrypted using multiple forms of encryption. I think AES is one of them. I think Blowfish is another one, and I can't remember what the third one is. But by encrypting in with a salt on each one of those things, it ensures that even if the government or some government was able to crack one of these encryption methodologies, which any one of these would be one of the biggest news of the century in some sense. These things are widely considered to be pretty ironclad, but just to be overly cautious, we encrypt them with three different encryption methodologies with three different passwords. And so each one of these things, if you wanted to brute force them, it would take in the order of millennia to brute force these things, which is pretty ridiculous. And then do that millennia 3 times, and they'll do that within 7 days, but then also do it 67 times on 67 nodes. That would be astronomically high. Even with a quantum computer, that would be extraordinarily difficult. So the idea is to back up those TSS key shares. The benefit is that we are insured with 100% certainty that the TSS shares are backed up all the time, and so they're always recoverable if something catastrophic were to occur. The negative side is that we are exposing the TSS shares publicly in an encrypted fashion, true, but the data is there, available to anybody to grab. And so we have to make sure that the encryption methodology, that we don't have some sort of code bug where it uploads the shares without being encrypted because of some, weird bug or something like this, or, all that kind of stuff. And so that's the give and the take to the idea. This is the only feature that I see we really need to do before we go down the road of privacy chains and that kind of stuff, because that way we know that everything's recoverable no matter what were to happen. That's it in a nutshell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, basically it just means that the network is never unrecoverable. It means that nodes can always rebuild, even if they haven't backed up their TSS key shares, which they should be doing regularly, but this just creates a redundancy that makes it so THORChain is never unrecoverable, even if the network lost consensus, people lost access to their nodes, they can always get their key shares back, and we can just keep the party rolling, basically.
Yeah, because they can, if they lose their node, get destroyed by some nuclear bomb went off in New York that destroyed the data center or something like this. They were able to build new infrastructure on another part of the world, and then take those same keys, and to the network it would be the same node, even though it's different hardware. It is, from the network's perspective, it is the same exact, node. So like you can just rebuild somewhere else and carry on.
So on the risk side, like how are you personally feeling about it? Or like, will this have to go through some audits? Like, I mean, because it does sound like kind of scary. At the same time, it's kind of like necessary and a safety mechanism, but it also is like opening some amount of risk. So just like, how is that balance, or how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, we as the devs with Nine Realms and everybody, including THORsec in that conversations, we've had like many conversations together, like as on like chat and video chat and such, like discussing this idea in general and whether this is a good idea or a terrible idea. And I think a lot of people were kind of like on the fence about it, in the sense that it's like we know that it's safe because this encryption methodologies are used by, in the NSA, and it's, used everywhere all the time for all sorts of purposes. But there's always a kind of that little party. You're just like, well, you are exposing the keys in the end. And so it's like this, I think a lot of people were kind of on the fence about it, which is why we wanted to put up for an ADR, so that we kind of explain to the community and get the community to kind of coalesce in a certain direction, whatever direction that might be. I think as time goes on, I personally feel better about it. I mean, in the end, like everything we do within a blockchain is cryptography, right? Like every time you sign a transaction. So if that cryptography that, what's called elliptical cryptography, like if that were to be exploited or found some sort of bug to it, then like Bitcoin would die, right? And Ethereum would probably die as well, in a heartbeat. And so is the risk there? Well, yeah, of course it's there. Does anybody sit around worrying about elliptical curve being cracked? Some people do, I'm sure, but 99.9% of people don't, because they feel quite good and confident about it. It's been around since the 1990s, when the original white papers were written about it, and it's been used many times, and it's been hardened for over decades, literal decades. And so, and the same thing with like Blowfish and AES; those things have been around for ages. And so, like, yeah, there's a kind of this give and take about it, and I think for me, I'm feeling more and more confident about it as time goes on. And another way to think about it is like, what's the greater risk to happen to THORChain? Is the greater risk that somebody was able to crack these encryption methodologies like AES and whatnot? Or is the greater risk that like AWS kills all of the nodes, right? Or and DigitalOcean and what have you? Like, which one of those two scenarios is more likely to happen? And that's probably the one we should be optimizing as a community for. And if you ask me, the more likely scenario is AWS comes, shuts down all the nodes or something like this.
Or just really any catastrophic event, like a solar flare EMP just nuking every Thor node, just like any kind of just random freak event that would, cause network downtime that could possibly, cause the network to not go back online if people didn't back up their key shares. So this would make it so THORChain is always recoverable. Even if something does happen to, the consensus and nodes haven't, done their own backups. So
that's part of it too. Like
this is the way to go for it.
That's part of it too. Like if we want to have faith in the node operators that they are backing up their TSS shares routinely every week, right? And what were to happen if we did a key gen? We're doing a churn, and that would take about 6 hours to do that process, and then the node operator is backing up their key, but they do it like 24 hours later. But in that 24-hour period, something were to happen or whatever, right? Like, the question is like, if we feel confident and we have faith in our node operators that they're backing up their TSS shares, then we don't need to do this. They're doing their jobs, they're backing up their TSS shares, and we just trust them to maintain that node with properly. Or we just say, let's be better to be safe than sorry. Let's not make assumptions about how the network is being operated and run. Let's just optimize for certainty.
Yep. So that's ADR 004. Pluto just put in a motion to bypass the vote. So that means that nodes can show if they disagree with this, and then it could be put to a full node vote, because all the developers currently agree on the stance to adopt ADR 004 to back up the TSS key shares on chain. So that means if you're a node operator and you disagree with this ADR and you don't want the key shares to be backed up on chain, you can vote using Node Mimir, and make your voice heard, and then it could be put up to a full regular consensus vote if it comes to that. But all the developers are in agreement, so that's why there was a motion to bypass a full vote for ADR 004. So I think there's a week to make your voice heard on that. Yeah, 7 days. At which point the ADR passes by default. So if you're a node operator and you don't agree with ADR 004, now's the time to say something.
Yep. One I think I actually just thought of just now is what if we made it so it's configurable, so you can opt out if you choose as a node operator. So that if you were the node operator, say I'm going to be good about this, and I'm going to back up my shares, and I don't need to do it on chain. I'm going to do it through my own mechanism or procedures. And then giving individual nodes the ability to opt out.
What if there was a minimum, I don't know what makes sense. Maybe 2/3 wouldn't be enough, but if it was X number of nodes have to opt into this or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. I don't know. And to be honest, there's no clear-cut answer to it.
Hey, Impossible Hunter, do you have something to say about ADR 4?
Yeah, I just had a question. Is it necessary for all of the node operators to update every week? What happens if you had it where a third of the node operators added their new key to the chain every week instead? That way, in case something goes wrong and the real key is revealed, only 1/3 are compromised.
Yeah. So you need at least 2/3 of the keys backed up to be restorable, and whether that's backed up on chain or backed up through an individual node's automated procedure or however they back it up to, whatever they put it to, and hopefully they're doing that in a secure way. That's all it's required is just 2/3 of the node operator's keys to be backed up and to be restorable for the network to continue on, and that's 2/3 on a per Asgard basis, to be clear. If you were to back up 1/3, then that doesn't really help you much. But it does make it more likely to make it brute forceable. It's kind of like if you had a 12-word seed phrase, right, for your wallet, and you knew 6 of them, but you lost the other 6 because something happened, whatever. Then how easy it is to brute force the other 6 words in your thing becomes easier to accomplish. And I think that's also true for TSS shares, but I'm not 100% sure. Our cryptographer would be much better at this than I am. I'm not a cryptographer myself, but I think that the more shares that you have, the more easy it is to brute force the other ones. But I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to think of if there was a way to have 1/3 upload the first week, then the second week a different third upload. But I get what you're saying. I guess the idea was just
there's a different vault, so you need the TSS key shares for that vault.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense then. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Sweet, thanks, man. All right, anything else you want to say on that, Chad? It's an interesting idea about being able to opt out of backing up the key shares on chain.
Yeah, I'll bring it up with the dev teams and see if they think it's a good idea or a bad idea. Maybe it's not a very good idea. It's something I just came to mind just now, but maybe that's not a good idea that we shouldn't be doing it. But I'll talk with them and get their viewpoint on it.
Sweet. So next up, AVAX integration. So last word is that AVAX integration is almost ready to go. Aggregator is almost done as well. So I think we're going to see a release for AVAX really soon. I hate to keep saying within the next 2 weeks or so, but it is looking very, very soon for the AVAX integration, and that's going to ship along with the aggregator. So we're getting 2 for the price of 1 here. AVAX and AVAX aggregator shipped out real soon. So thanks, Adonis, for all the work there.
Yeah, I think last I heard, we'll probably have AVAX done before the next Twitter Spaces on Friday. So within a week, hopefully that's true, and I'm not made a liar, but I'm fairly sure it's going to be within the next week. So big advancement there.
Awesome.
Sweet. And other big news this week: THORswap aggregator went live on Tuesday, I believe. I got some stats here from Orion. Pluto's coming up. What's up, man?
He's still listening. I'm not sure he's a speaker yet.
Yeah, he's connecting.
Seems to be stuck.
All right. Well, whatever. All right. Let's keep going with the THORswap aggregator. Let me throw some stats out here. It actually looks like a really successful launch, and the way these features go a lot of the time, like we saw this with the THOReau launch, is that there's a okay amount of volume at the beginning, and then it just ramps up slowly. Like these things rarely start out like doing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of volume immediately, but I was actually pretty impressed by these stats. So since Tuesday on the THORswap aggregator, about 50 swaps with about $375,000 in volume. So that's an average swap size of about $7,500 per swap. So it's a median swap size of about 1.49 ETH. And some of the popular assets that were swapped on the THORswap aggregator, we got USDC, USDT, Curve, Lido, Mana, Engine Coin. So there's some interesting swaps going on. And while it might not be like, some crazy number, that it's actually a very, I think it's a very respectable, start to the THORswap aggregator. The $7,500 average swap size with a median swap size of 1.49 ETH. We're seeing a lot of variety of assets being swapped. I think that's a strong first few days for the THORswap aggregator.
Yeah, those stats looking pretty bullish in many respects, especially it's like so early too. Like I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, definitely awesome to see. Also agree. Yeah, I think it'll just take some time. Like people have to get the word out. This stuff takes some time to just like spread. So tell all your friends what's possible now. There was some pretty solid press, so hopefully some people are hearing about it, and the next time they need to do a swap, they'll realize they don't have to go to 3 different places anymore. So yeah, super cool. Even ERC20 to ERC20, like it aggregates 0x, Sushi, Uni, and 1inch. So even just for shopping around for that, like you can just do that straight on THORswap now, which is pretty cool. And just always getting the best price for the most output. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's pretty exciting first numbers, and I think it'll just be like a slow, gradual increase as more and more people like realize, oh, I don't have to go everywhere anymore.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. Like this, to know that THORswap is doing this in a way where it's always giving you best execution, best price, even if THORChain is not the place to do it, right? It still finds the best, which is the right way to do it, right? Let THORChain compete competitively, based on that.
Yeah, I think those swaps, like how you just mentioned, like USDC and USDT, I think those are kind of really interesting to think about, just because like there are those pools on THORChain, but now it can be like, oh, well, in this case, it makes more sense to swap to ETH and then use the Sushi pool, for example. So that's kind of cool to see it like finding more efficient routes.
Yeah, and it's strong for users too, because they always get best execution on THORswap. You just go and you just make your swap, and then you don't have to worry about going to all these different interfaces for it. So like it's a strong user experience, which is what people want in this in their decks. They want to have just ease of use. Swap your Bitcoin for USDC. You're going to get best execution, and we'll see how that holds up with when single-sided yield comes, because once just the amount of liquidity in the pools starts going up and ballooning, we're probably going to see more swaps going through, just THORChain. So it really just depends on how much liquidity we can put into THORChain with single-sided yield. But I think it's great that, the swaps will go through the aggregator rather than, THORChain pools. It's strong. It makes a strong use case for, why use THORChain, why use THORswap. Because THORChain is really what's enabling that swap in the first place. It just finds a better route for the people who want to have a good swap. So
yeah, and we were talking. Yes. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, it even takes it further when it makes an open API that's available for other like UIs and to utilize. So like Trust Wallet could use it, for example, and find best execution using THORswap's capabilities, which is pretty baller too.
Yeah, definitely bullish on the integrations, and this kind of like laying out the framework to really start reaching out to all those partners and all. And was also going to say, we talked about this yesterday, but like just how THORChain's general view towards like quote unquote competitors or like other multi-chain things that are, there's not much competition right now, but maybe more so in the future. But then these interfaces can, just always kind of aggregate all of that. and use THORChain when it makes the most sense, use other things when it makes the most sense. And that's really good for the entire space because it just makes everything more resilient. And it's just cool how THORChain is kind of like pro competition in that sense because it just makes the whole space stronger. So you were even saying hypothetically, if Maya launches, then THORSwap could hypothetically split a swap into both THORChain and Maya and potentially have less slip fee because it's doing two smaller swaps or something like that. There's a lot of hypotheticals like that where an interface like THORSwap and others, of course, could aggregate all these different things and it can just get more and more kind of complex and use better and better routes as more and more stuff gets integrated into the aggregator. So this is really just the first phase of the new era with THORChain aggregation. And every time another chain is aggregated, that just kind of exponentially increases the number of pairs that can be swapped, so it's going to be really, really exciting over time.
Right. I don't think there's a single interface right now that you can do ARC20s on AVAX C chain to ERC20s. Maybe besides Rengo Exchange right now, but that's not with one click. So I think once AVAX gets shipped, Pluto just gave a little update that there's one PR for the AVAX router to go out in 196, and then it's getting shipped. So we need 196 first. And then we'll see AVAX that'll go live with the aggregator, and then we're going to see ERC20 to ARC20 tokens, which is going to be really cool. Strong use case for THORSwap and any interface really. I'm looking at I know DeFi Spot's been trying to hype up their aggregator, which is coming. Rango has a really strong one. Aggregators are just such a strong product for the users.
Yeah, I think 1inch already does that kind of stuff now, where they split transactions into multiple transactions where it makes sense and divides some of it to Sushi and some of it to Uni and some of it to here and some of it or whatever. We're not the first ones to be doing that, but it's a really powerful and useful tool. And it's really wonderful when you think about the idea that we can build these really complex systems that have strong benefits for users, but build it in a way that everybody has equal access to this system without you being, a data scientist to understand how to use these complex trading systems. It all just kind of is abstracted away from you, and any fool can walk up and get that best execution experience.
Sweet, I think that's it for new news and stuff.
The other thing is that so with the latest version that was just launched, 95. Protocol and liquidity is, from a coding perspective, is done. Other than now it's on StageNet going through a testing phase, and maybe we'll find some bugs or some things to kind of iron out with it, but the code itself is largely done. Single-sided yield will hopefully be merged as part of version 96. I'm hoping that the last PR will get merged. It seems like it's got good support from the devs and from the THORSec team. So far, it's pretty small PR too, not much really to it for the last one. So hopefully that'll be done as part of 96, and that's 2 out of the 3 large features that I've been working on at least. And then the last one is the order book thing, which I think is just one more PR for that. So we're getting so close to getting all these major features just on committed and on the master branch, so to speak, and starting to be tested and validated on StageNet. And then whenever we feel good or comfortable with it, both us as the dev community as well as the node operators feel good about it, we can start to enable it on mainnet and slowly ramp up the kind of raising the caps kind of thing we did before, kind of ramping up these features and kind of walking up slowly to make sure they are good and safe and reliable.
Oh, so excited for single-sided yield and all these other features, protocol and liquidity. Oh my God. There's always so much going on in this ecosystem. That's why it's just so exciting to be here, because there's just so much innovation out. That's always happening. It just kind of blows my mind. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited too. These things are like massive changes in the protocol in a good way, and it really shapes up what this network is capable of doing. We're going to see, I think we're going to see huge changes in the TVL and trade volume and all these things. Maybe not on day one, so have a little bit of patience about it, but over the times of a longer time span, it's going to be hugely impactful and beneficial for the network in the long term for sure.
Sweet. So I think we can start opening up for questions if people want to come up, ask questions about AVAX, about ADR for the key share backups, aggregator, just really anything. If people want to discuss privacy or the vote that's going on in the THORChain Dev Discord right now, you can use this as your platform to make your point if you want. We're here. So hit the button in the bottom left if you want to come up.
Actually, wait a sec for that. Chad, maybe this would be good to go over, but one of the things that was clarified yesterday, or was that yesterday or 2 days ago? I don't remember already, but on that Discord stage, was just like what this vote actually means. Because I think the vote kind of got like pulled into this like privacy versus no privacy, but really it's just this like symbolic vote of like what the next chain priority should be for the devs and stuff like that. So maybe you want to go over like what this vote truly means?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask. That's good context to give too. So like historically, the direction of what chains were added and when and all these kind of things were largely guided by the core dev team and Nine Realms. And that was kind of like, it's fine in the beginning when you're kind of first getting your feet wet in some sense. But of course, we have ambitions to be as most decentralized as we can reasonably get, and including that includes the decision-making process as well. And so we wanted to, instead of like, the dev team or Nine Realms or whatever says, okay, the next chain we're adding is this one, and then we get approval from the community by Amir votes, and then gets added and so forth and so on. We wanted the community to have control over which chains are being added next and what and this kind of stuff. It's a little bit not as simple as that, because what chains get added next is actually a very complicated question. There are a lot of things at play. There are a lot of things like, how long would it take to add that chain? How long would it take the community of that chain to get it kind of interface with? Is it difficult or easy to implement that particular one? Some are very easy to do, and some take like many months or even years in some cases to do it. So like, it's not that clear cut of like, hey, this is next, and then just like do it and carry on. But we still wanted to kind of give the community the kind of the power or the decision making process to some degree, and so this vote about next chain was giving the community the idea that they can vote on what is the next chain to work that the core devs and Nine Realms are going to be working together on to implement onto StageNet. And it does not necessarily mean that chain will be added to mainnet. That requires a 2/3 majority vote and consensus to add it onto mainnet. So we might see that like 40% of the vote is for Haven and 30% of the vote is for Binance Smart Chain, and some other percentages for Dash or whatever, and none of them got 2/3 majority. It's all got like a little piece of the pie, and that's okay within the context of StageNet. We can just kind of spend the time and energy trying to get that ramped up and testing, and then once we do that, then the community can say, all right, we've tested on StageNet. It looks like it's pretty solid. We're bullish on this chain in terms of its impact on the network and its economically and otherwise, security and so forth and so on. And so then the second vote occurs to say, let's enable Haven on mainnet or whatever that is. And so that'd be a secondary vote that happens downstream. But this one's just to like kind of guide the devs kind of direction of what chain the community wants to see added to the network next, rather than myself or Pluto or anybody else in the dev teams.
Yes, sir. Just another tool in the decentralization bucket to make the network just the voice of the nodes. I mean, as I said before, at the beginning of this call, the network is only as strong as the people that are operating the nodes, and more diverse people that are running more nodes in more locations, putting up that rune bond is imperative. So if people are, if you're really passionate about, the direction of THORChain, that's a great way to contribute to this conversation, and just to have a voice in the direction of the network, and just strengthen the decentralization of the network. The more people and more geographies that are running nodes, just the more decentralized it is, and the better this process works, and the more that it helps the network as a whole. Hey, Impossible Hunter.
Hey, so if things get approved to StageNet, right, and they're on there, and then they don't get approved to go to mainnet, does that code just stay on StageNet? Do you guys almost ever revert stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's something that I think Nine Realms and the devs will kind of discuss at that point in time. That hasn't really been discussed at this point. There's a general consensus within coding in general that you don't want dead code just sitting around doing nothing. But at the same time, that code is still valuable. Maybe a fork of that chain later on is useful. We want to keep that code around and make it easier for us later. So that's a discussion to be had at another time. Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
I think that brings up another point to clarify, though, is so like let's say Haven wins this vote, and it's like it's only like 30% of the nodes that voted for it, right? But that's like the winner. To actually get pushed to mainnet, that requires like in that case that would be the supermajority, or is that all of them adopting it, or is it 2/3 in that case?
That would be 2/3. I mean, to be fair, like this whole next chain idea, like that was originally my concept, and how I originally intended the design was that this also required 2/3 because everything requires 2/3 within the THORChain, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to spend the dev time, which takes months of effort, to implement Haven, right? Even though it's not going to get to mainnet because only 40% of people actually want to see it there, and the other 60% don't want to see it there, and then it ends up being a huge waste of time. Which I think Killer was talking about that at the debate of the day. And to be fair, like he's right. Like he doesn't want to get to a place where we're just burning devs' time. Just nobody wants to do that, including myself. So, but I think some people disagree within the team of like the way to do this, and I guess we're still kind of feeling things out. This is the first time we're doing it, and maybe we might want to change the design a little bit on round 2 or whatever. Like this time, we didn't even have like no chain as a choice. That should give people the ability. I don't want any chain to be added. Like that's a legitimate perspective to have. We should give people the ability to vote in that direction if they choose. So. But I would rather to see us be just a 2/3 consensus, even the StateNet. That would be much more. That would create a shilling point within the community of like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, I think that's a good point to clarify because like the winner might only have 30% or something like that, but it would still need to have the 2/3 to actually get approved. So like that'd be not an ideal scenario if like the winner ends up not. Yeah, it's like you don't know if 2/3 actually want something if you're voting in the way that it's happening right now. So hopefully that doesn't cause any hiccups.
Yeah, and like in Binance Smart Chain's case, like that's not really controversial whether or not to add Binance Smart Chain or not. I think that's not very few people who were saying like never add Binance Smart Chain. Like that's not really controversial, right? And so that's likely to get the 2/3 majority once it's already done on StageNet and validated, and people want to get the immediate value of adding another chain like that has such economic power behind it. But obviously Haven is different. That's more controversial, or Monero is different. And so that's a little bit of a different case.
Hey, Zeb. What's going on, man?
How you guys doing? Just wanted to jump in. What you guys are talking about is interesting. With the 30% though, like, so let's say you're right. Like, let's say Haven gets like 35%, or 40%, somebody else gets 30 and somebody else gets like 10 or whatever the case may be. I think what we also have to remember, I don't think we should say that that's going to be the outcome, on a StageNet vote, for example, because it's 30% against 10 other options that are currently going on right now. Whereas my understanding on StageNet, you would need 2/3 of just yourself. Like you're not going up against, 7 chains, 8 chains or anything like that. You would just need supermajority to choose you. You know what I mean? So just wanted to throw that in.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It'd be basically yes, no at that point. But so you'd have to, the question is how many of the people who didn't vote for Haven would vote yes or no on the final vote, right? So that's kind of like the unknown with voting this way at this stage, I guess.
I wonder how many of the ones that voted for Binance Smart Chain would have voted for Haven. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's hard. Yeah. I think it's just hard to look at this one and make any kind of assumption of what it might be on the next.
Yeah, it's a different question entirely, And I think we'll have to come up with a way to gauge that before that actually happens. So yeah, it's all kind of a work in progress. Like we all just kind of try and come up with these processes to create a decentralized environment where everyone can have voice. But it's just part of the turmoil, sort of working through this environment. It just makes it a little bit more chaotic and difficult to actually come to these decisions. But the vote to go to mainnet is will be a completely separate thing. And I think, when something's, people will know that vote is coming. We'll have, we'll be able to gauge that beforehand, I think. And, because no one wants to put anything on StageNet that's not going to be going to mainnet eventually, So we'll have to get to that when we come to it. But all this is kind of just, process discovery. Is like discovering how, this decentralized organization does things.
Makes sense.
One kind of interesting component to this is that, like, as you get more people to vote in the process, like before it was mostly just 9 rooms and the OG team kind of like determining what was next, which is good in some ways and bad in other ways. Like, it's good in that it's very decisive and where you just make good motions forward by a group of individuals who, understand the system quite well and the risks involved. And so they're quite educated and can speak from a place of experience and knowledge. And then as we go into like a more decentralized way of doing the node operators, like, well, then you have more minds and more perspectives and more like influences involved, like, which is good in some sense, but it can also backfire a little bit in the sense that, like, the network can like ossify in a way that's, ossify meaning get kind of like static in the way that it's run. And then we don't want to add any chains next because nobody can agree that the next chain is going to be chain A, whatever that might be. And then it becomes like kind of a standoff within the community, kind of similar about, like the block size debate that Bitcoin had a couple of years ago. And like nobody could agree with that block size that was going to be. Somebody wanted to change it and somebody didn't want to change it. And then in the end, you just stay with the hell you are now, which is really great in Bitcoin's case because Bitcoin needs to be static in many respects to be safe. But in our case, we're a bit different because we are dynamically reacting to the industry in general. And so as new chains come out tomorrow that are really nice and valuable, blah, 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 whatever, and we want to add those things, we have to be a little bit nimble. We're kind of retain our nimbleness, unlike Bitcoin, right? Or even unlike Ethereum to some degree. So like, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And there's a lot of benefits to this motion. And I think there's also going to be it might cause like more slowness in the development of the network.
Yeah, I think it's good that it allows for ossification too, because, that's the way that code gets hardened, just by sitting there and by people looking at it critically for long periods of time, and by always adding new chains without the option of being able to let the network cool down for a while, or say like, hey, maybe now we don't even want to add any more chains to THORChain for a long time. Like that's there's something to be said for that as well. So I think it's good that that we have a process that allows people to even say that we don't want any more chains on THORChain. Like the more options, the better, because the best option might just be to sit back and to let the network do its thing for a while. Sorry, Zev, you can continue.
Well, it's a little bit complicated for node operators because if we had the ability tomorrow to add 1,000 chains to the network, if we were to do that hypothetically, the cost of running that infrastructure would become so high that the node operators would not be able to do it and still remain profitable, right? And so there's only like the node operators are taking on additional expenses, Solana being very high, resource intensive, and Bitcoin being relatively low. And so that's just part of the analysis that node operators have to make. Like, well, we're spending more money to do this. Is the economic value by adding this new chain, B-Dash or Binance Smart Chain or whatever, give enough value that it offsets the cost? And that's like a hard thing to actually come to determination on.
If I could just one last thing, and then I'll let you guys go. I actually think what you might see from what you're talking about is potentially more of what you're seeing now, right? So if there's like 10 different chains or 5 different chains that you're putting out to the nodes, like what do you want to integrate next? And certain devs have different opinions on the different chains. Like, why not post somewhere in a thread like the ups and the downs, or the pros and the cons of this chain? I think you're going to see more people start lobbying for specific chains, start talking about them, debating, and I think that's kind of healthy. Like I've kind of been enjoying, obviously, where I'm aligned. I want to see Haven for multiple reasons become a part of THORChain, but I haven't spent this much time in your guys' server ever, and I kind of don't want to leave. So integrate Haven. See you guys.
Sweet. Thanks, man. Other people want to come up as well. Thanks for that, Chad. Other people want to come up as well. You can just hit the button and request and share your your input or just your thoughts on the whole privacy thing. THORFi. Hey, what's up?
Hey guys, I was wondering, I remember back when Cosmos did their upgrade, and it was great for THORChain because it really allowed us to increase the number of nodes. And I was wondering if there's anything you've seen on the future horizon that might help with, sharding vaults or something where we can, make it easier to go bare metal or increase the number of nodes, that type of thing.
Well, it's a couple of different questions there. In terms of increasing the nodes, the problem with increasing the nodes, I think the limiting factor, is not so much, at least in this current moment, it's not so much Cosmos itself. I think that's a limitation of like 200 or so, and we have an artificial cap right now at 120, I think. The problem really is about getting enough room put together to actually run a node, right? Like the number of people in the world that have 300,000 rune or greater is not 10,000, right? It's not going to be that high of a number. And so unless you get people kind of pooling their funds together, rune together to create a node collectively, that's going to be probably one of the more difficult aspects to it. And as time goes on, these, probably the requirement's not going to be 300,000, it's going to be 400,000 or 500,000 or 600,000. Like, especially as the network becomes more and more successful, it's probably going to be true. And so that's going to be an interesting thing to see how that happens, But in terms of bare metal, that's a different question. That's going to require a bunch of work from the community. Hopefully, the community is willing to step up and do most of that work. I hope that's the case. And start, going through the process and documenting and making it easier for other people to understand how difficult or easy it is, and to make sure we set those things up with security in mind, and make sure Kubernetes itself is enabled in a way that's secure, and as well as the node itself and the OS. All those things, firewalls, networking, all those things need to be kind of locked down in a way that's secure. Otherwise, we create potential threat to the network.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was wondering if there's anything you guys have seen on the horizon in terms of like, sharding the vaults more. I know that we were able to do some of that with the last Cosmos upgrade, and I'm just wondering if there's any technology that you're kind of have an eye on that you see coming. And that was just my last question. Thanks, guys.
For sharding the vaults, so the vaults themselves are already sharded. The question then becomes, can we shard them more? And yes, we can shard them as much as we want to. There's a configuration option controlled by the nodes called Asgard size, and it just dictates how many nodes can exist, how many members there are per Asgard. And that number can be increased or decreased arbitrarily. What makes you to push one direction or the other depends upon a security viewpoint. The higher number of members, the more secure it is, because it makes it more difficult, the more nodes to crack into to steal funds. And then the lower the number is, the more Asgards there are and the faster TSS signing time there is. And so the number of transactions per second that the network can actually sign increases with the number of Asgards and the number of nodes per Asgard. That answer your question? I'm not sure if it does.
Yeah, it does. It does. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, hopefully, I think that's one part of the scaling solution to THORChain. But the biggest thing is really just getting more node operators who are interested in the network. I think that there's no real band-aid for that solution other than actually getting more organizations, more people running Thor nodes, more people that are interested in THORChain, interested in decentralization. That's where it has to go in order to sufficiently decentralize the network.
And there's no way to maybe use the new multi-sig we have to allow people to bond to nodes, in a trustless manner with a lower amount or something. I'm just trying to think out of the box.
Multi-sig doesn't actually give you what you're looking for. You can already bond up to 6 or 7 different addresses into a single node. And that, again, that's also an artificial configuration that can be changed at any time by node operators. If they see fit to reduce it or increase it, they can. To get to a situation where you're using less bond, to under 300,000, say you want to do it with 10,000 rune or whatever, the cost of the operation of the infrastructure itself would probably exceed the value that you would get in rewards, because you bonded up so little, 10,000 relatively low relative to what we see validators today. And so the question then becomes like, well, how do you do this in a way that people with low amount of liquidity or bond can bond up and also have low infrastructure costs or no infrastructure costs? And that's been a question on my mind for a long period of time. I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately as well. And to be honest, I haven't thought of a way that accomplishes that task without compromising on security. And that's one thing I'm trying to not do, is compromise on security. The best we can do is just kind of like multi-bonded node. You and your friends can kind of collude together to build a node together. But I haven't figured out a way to do it without compromising the security.
Hey, Kenton, what's up?
Oh, hey guys. Actually, my question is on these lines is, we all agree we need decentralization, we need more nodes, but to me, that seems to be our hang up, is we have people who know how to run a node without the capital, and we have people with capital who don't know how to run a node. So, how do we meet, how do we pair those two? And in my mind, the only way we can do that is publicly. People are, out there advertising, they're looking for either party. And, I get the idea with being anonymous and, protecting ourselves, blah, 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 but I don't see how we scale without nodes becoming public. I don't know if you guys have any comments on that or thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, bonding to, like, adding to a bond of a node, like if you're doing the pooled bond for a node, which is available right now for 6 or 7 people, like Chad just said, that's a trusted relationship you need to have with that node operator. You need to be able to trust that node operator to operate their node correctly. And there's ways to make it more trustless, but at the end of the day, that's a trusted relationship. So you shouldn't, no one should do that, completely anonymously with a node operator. You should have a trusted relationship if you're providing someone Rune to bond to their node.
Yeah, totally. So I guess, but how do we develop that trust without being doxxed, without getting to know each other, without looking into each other's background?
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, if you are a person who has the skill set to run a node, but you don't have Rune, but you have a bunch of friends of yours that are Rune holders or something like this, you can do that, and that's probably happening already in a handful of nodes, most likely. How many, I don't honestly know, but the other way of doing it is just like saying, kind of broadcasting to the world and saying, hey, we're creating this company. The company's name is Node Serve or something like this, whatever. And we're going to run this as a business, which is kind of what Nine Realms is already doing to some degree. Like they run nodes on the behalf of others, and they're publicly doxed and all that kind of stuff. There actually is some benefit for doxing in this scenario, just because if I know that this guy named Jacob is running nodes for people, I can actually look on chain to figure out how many nodes Jacob is running, and I can determine, what levels of threat Jacob potentially has to the network of seizing the network or being able to halt the network or whatnot. But the problem with that is like, okay, I know Jacob's got running these 3 nodes or whatever the hell it is, but then when Jacob also has a side business where he is anonymous and working with people anonymously, then you don't know how much and how many nodes a single individual has access to. You know what I mean? So it's a tricky thing, and doing what you're suggesting does help the network scale because it allows more Rune to be deployed into the bond of the network. My hope is that it won't matter so much in the long term, and there's been moments where it's going to matter and everybody's going to freak out about it, and that actually happened 6 months ago, or the hell the number was. But my hope is that as the Rune price just kind of scales and just kind of goes up, and just through the process of becoming a successful network, that the value of the bond also inherently scales, to larger and larger degrees, where we can get, 1 or 10 or $100 billion in the pools just because the Rune price is at some, really high quantity or high value.
I was wondering, is it maybe in the Discord group chat there, can you have a channel that maybe has people that are, they know how to run a node, they are running a node? Oh, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go. I hear you.
Okay, sorry. I was just wondering what about having in the Discord group there a channel for people who want to run a node but don't have capital, people who do have capital looking for someone to run a node, kind of like a matchmaking channel where people can start networking and connecting with each other.
Yeah, like Kyle was saying, if you do that, then it has to be a doxed relationship, and I'm nervous about not so much about necessarily you, Kenton, but like just the community in general saying, hey, this is a guy on Discord, his alias is, and my stuff to his node, and that becomes a security issue to deal with.
I'm wondering about this, just iterating on this idea. If it's probably okay to be doxxed if it's just small amounts. So what if there was a way to have a vault that anyone can stake to, and that node operators can then attach to use for there. So if a node operator bonds, to a third or whatever the amount is, so that they're not at risk of taking the capital, they can then access this, DAO vault that people have staked Rune to. Just an idea.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that without requiring trust as part of that process. Like that's the ideal, the kind of the golden egg, the utopian kind of result to this problem, at least in my eyes, is that we have a mechanism people can provide Rune to secure the network while not providing any network, and the amount of Rune you can secure is arbitrarily small or arbitrarily large. That's the theoretical best case scenario, but I don't know how to do that in a way that actually makes sense, unfortunately.
It's something that we're all thinking about a lot, just how to scale the security of this network, because it's just such an important topic, and probably one of the limiters of growth is how quickly Bond can actually scale with the network. So I think that we're all looking for solutions for that. Nine Realms has some ideas, the core team has some ideas, and we're constantly thinking about that. So it's a work in progress.
It does seem that's probably the most difficult problem to solve, at least in my eyes. Like getting TVL, I think we'll probably do that pretty effectively with single-sided yield and other things. Getting trade volume, I think we'll do that pretty effectively with integrations with more chains and more dexes and more UIs and wallets and so forth and so on. But the scaling the security side is probably the most challenging or the most barriers to doing that. I think that's going to require a lot of time and energy to support that.
Yeah, hopefully, like Nine Realms can contribute to a solution for that. Like we got some ideas that we're bouncing around, but it's going to take some time to get this to get all the details ironed out here. Got the THORmaxian requested to come up.
Yeah, if people have questions or comments or whatever, feel free to raise your hand and get pulled on stage.
Hey.
Hey, I was just wondering if it's possible, theoretical, if anybody's thought of, I'm sure somebody's thought of this, if there's some way to dumb down the node running process to create like a node in a box or a piece of software you can download that's sort of an idiot-proof node. I mean, obviously there would still be some complexity to it, but it seems like it's likely that a real node pro could write some software that sort of is, node running for dummies, or is that just not possible?
Well, so the challenge with this is that say you have a bunch of people running nodes, and only some of them are running the full daemons, like full Bitcoin and full Ethereum and some of them aren't, and they're just kind of believing the chain, the THOReau chain itself. And so in that hypothetical scenario, it is theoretically possible for an attacker, to insert fictitious transactions that never happened on Bitcoin that is swapping to Ethereum. And then that becomes obviously problematic for funds would be lost in that hypothetical scenario. So that's why everybody who validates the chain has to validate the chains of all the other chains. Mm-hmm. And you could have a subset do it, like maybe 1/3 of the nodes do Bitcoin and 1/3 of the nodes do Ethereum and 1/3 of the nodes do Dash or whatever. But then you're just relying on those 1/3 to be honest, which you wouldn't even know. You couldn't even slash them if they were to collude in some way to do it themselves. You wouldn't even be able to slash those people because you wouldn't know anything different other than what they've told you, right? And so it becomes a very, very difficult thing. We've talked about the idea of having what we call the light node, basically be kind of like a cold storage. It holds some asset, but it only holds a single asset and therefore only needs to hold process the chain of a single chain, like Bitcoin, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that, there comes some kind of complexities in the code to be worried about. I mean, still, it might be possible to do it that way to help secure assets without having as much infrastructure requirements for one of these light node type systems. Full validators still need to validate everything on the chain, but that's like the two things you have to be worried about if you're like a light node or a passive node. One of these concepts is, one, is there fake transactions being broadcasted onto THORnode that never transpired on Bitcoin or Binance or whatever? And two, is THORnode itself been manipulated or in some way? So like, you don't want to get in a situation where you trust somebody else's THORnode to have the data correct because they could be malicious. And if that's the case, then you're trusting somebody else's information, which is obviously inherently problematic, right? Like somebody could simple attack the network and, insert some malicious code that mints 1 billion Rune tokens into their wallet, and then they start swapping into Bitcoin and Ethereum and these things, and start just siphoning money out of the system. So like whenever you deal with validators or anybody that's securing assets, or securing Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, you always have to make sure you have a valid running of the THORnode client itself, THORnode box itself, and two, you have to make sure that all the transactions that are being observed onto the chain from other chains do exist, and they're not made up or manipulated.
So is there no way to every node needs to be a full node? Can somebody write some software that leads you through all of the things it takes to run a node, and a sort of whatever it is, node in a box or auto node or whatever, and you just go to the GitHub and you download the latest auto node and you install it?
It already is auto node though. Like right now, if you actually want to run a node, it is auto node. Like there's just two commands you run and the whole thing just runs. Right? It's the way that it's set up now is done. It could be made even simpler, but it's already excruciatingly simple.
That's
especially
simple, yes. Right.
Yeah, it's as simple as you can reasonably get. I mean, you could probably make it into a single command or two commands, but like the way that it is now, it's excruciatingly simple.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that comes into play is when something blows up, something fails. Well, if you don't know how to run the infrastructure, then you're just you don't know what the hell you're doing. It's almost like if you're driving a car and the one of the injector fuel lines explodes. Well, if you don't know how to fix it, then you're kind of shit out of luck, right? And so we kind of expect our node operators to have the knowledge and skill set to be able to fix an injection line theoretically, if the right break. Because I'm not there to fix it for you, right? Neither is anybody else on the team. I mean, I guess we're there to support you if you really need, but like we're not running into your house and helping you fix your shit.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of wondering. It's like, well, if we've got just a lack of skill and knowledge here, could we develop a department, or could somebody start a side project or something that, gives everyone that support they would need to run a node and training and make it as easy as possible? And
yeah, we have to worry about doxing in that scenario. We don't want all the node operators signing up for an email address, right? Or something like this, doxing their thing. So we have to be careful about that aspect to it. But the problem is that I'd rather have node operators. I'd rather have Coinbase running a node than some random, person in Europe, right? Even if that person is an intelligent, DevOpsy person, just because, Coinbase is very, they're very advanced people over there. They have entire data centers and staffs of people and proper security measures put into place. Like ideally, if I had to wave my wand and just get what I wanted, it was the whole network would be run by Coinbases and institutions, and very few of the nodes would be run by random individuals. I mean, that's good in some ways, but it's also bad. Like it can be shut down more easily in that scenario. But there's pros and cons.
Gotcha. All right, that's all I got. Thanks.
Yeah.
Sweet, thanks, man. Pluto, did you have something to say about the security thing we're talking about?
Yeah, I think, definitely an interesting conversation. I agree with all the possibilities that Chad put forth. like and I do think that like the most important thing is trying to match people that have like the means or the capital with the people that have the skills. I think that's kind of what we need to focus on. But with regards to like education and support, Nine Realms basically provides, as close to 24/7 on-call support to validators as we can. So anytime, any validator has an issue, usually it's a pretty common thing, like their PVC isn't mounting or whatever. We'll jump in and help them out with those kind of things. So I think from a support standpoint, like the network is pretty well covered. I also think from like an education and a tooling standpoint as well, like it's really well done. Like, even before I joined Nine Realms, I was running, a validator on the side, and I, just as an outsider looking in, like was incredibly impressed with how well the node launcher and the cluster launcher repositories were set up and how good the documentation was. So I actually don't think, I think that like for anybody who has, even like a basic DevOps or, infrastructure engineering background, running a node is beyond simple enough as it is. And then with respect to like the, should we build or should we change the way the protocol works to make it simpler? Absolutely not. Like, no, THORChain is already the most complex blockchain in existence. There's no reason to like make it more complicated by having light nodes or validator nodes or whatever nodes, just observing on specific chains. Like, I just think that completely overcomplicates the problem. And like, if what you're looking to do is make it so that like more people can run nodes, like I think that the goal should really just be to find like more ways to match people with skills with people with money. And I think that there, we should explore organizational concepts like DAOs that could potentially allow you to do that. But from a technical perspective, I think that like THORChain infrastructure is good the way it is.
Yeah, but the negative of that approach is that you end up being kind of what Bitcoin's probably largest centralization problem of like, there's like 4 Bitcoin pools. And, if 3 were compromised, the whole chain would be, I think it's like 4, actually no, 4 would be compromised. The whole chain would be compromised, right, of Bitcoin. And so like when you get into this place where you're trying to match skills and money, commonly what will happen is you'll see like 3 entities, Nine Realms being one of them, and maybe 2 or 3 others that kind of like get a majority of the nodes. And then all of a sudden it's like those 3 operators who are running 80% of the nodes or something like this, right?
It should be really, it should end up being like a really competitive marketplace though, where like, Nine Realms has a bunch of overhead, in the sense that like we employ all these people to do protocol development as well. But then like a scrappier, DevOps engineer, it can get together with all of his friends in Serbia or wherever, and like they can, form a DAO at least, or at least have some, amount of like trust or clout within some community to like form a DAO to initially do the, run the node. So I think that like, we still have that like Cosmos upper limit on nodes, so we'll never be like a 10,000 node network. But like we should be able to get to a 200 node network where like more than half of those are run by like non large entities or large node operators. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting problem, but again, I just think it's more of like an organizational problem than it is like a technical one.
Yeah,
like anyone can run a profitable Thor node right now if they just like bought like a $13,000 rack mounted server. Like you'd have more than enough power to like scale, with THORChain to like 10 Cosmos based chains, 10 UTXO chains, and like 6 EVM chains. Like I've been doing some research on the bare metal stuff. So like capital expenditure, 13 grand, find a data center with a, 1 gigabit down, and you can run a Thor node. So I think that like from a technical perspective, like it's definitely possible. It's definitely doable. I want to see more people doing it. But like trying to change like the parameters of the network to be able to accommodate like Joe Schmo running it on their home computer, like I think we're solving for the wrong problem because it's so complicated and because you need to run and observe all these daemons. Like I just don't see that being possible without someone being on, basically having someone there who like understands either like cloud computing or bare metal computing very well.
Yeah, I do think that like there was one issue, the GitLab issue. It's up online. People want to read about it, and I'm not sure if Pluto you read it. I'd be curious to get your viewpoint on it. Is this concept called passive nodes, and which is basically a passive node is a validator that's not it's contributing to the Asgards, right? Contributing to the security of the assets, but not contributing to the chain itself, like the THORchain itself, and not committing blocks. And in that case, you can scale up the number of nodes like that secure the assets, like to be 100,000 theoretically speaking, and the bond requirements could be far less in those circumstances because they're not contributing to the chain itself. They don't pose any threat of like a Sybil attack in that context, right? And so there's a possibility that you can do that and allow for a bond to contribute to the network. But you still have the same hardware requirements that they have to maintain, all the full nodes and the full stack of a validator.
Yeah, I really like that idea because it would allow us to bypass that Cosmos upper limit, on actually like validating blocks. You can only gossip so many. You can only have a block time remain relatively constant at around 6 seconds while gossiping with so many peers. Like it's just not the speed of light won't let you and silicon wafers like won't let you do more and keep it that fast. So I think that's a great idea. I'll definitely revisit that issue and take another look at that. I wanted to actually ask you, Chad, your opinion on something, and it's probably not you'll probably say hell no, but I was thinking recently, because we were saying, we can't integrate Solana because, we can't run it would just be, it's untenable for node operators to run Solana. My question was would you ever, or would we ever as a protocol budge on this idea that every validator needs to run the chain daemon? Or would we be fine saying here's a list of 6 endpoints, pick one at random and just use the centralized endpoint because the centralized endpoint is probably run by Jump Capital and the whole chain is run by Jump Capital anyway. So if the chain is centralized, then the Bifrost, implementation can also be centralized as long as we, pick from randomly from one of 6 different, endpoints. The likelihood of all of them colluding together to screw over a THORchain vault just seems, very, very minuscule. And that would be a risk that we would caveat saying hey, node operators, don't enable Solana if you don't agree with this level of centralization risk. And LPs don't LP your funds if you likewise don't agree. But personally, I think that would be good enough and we would be able to get Solana. I'm wondering what your view is on something like that. And I know it's a bit of off topic, but I've been curious about this.
No, it's a good question to ask. Well, first of all, I think we can actually add Solana if we wanted to from a technical perspective. I'm not sure we can do it from a financial perspective because it would cost an additional $3,000 plus to node operators today, which might be just too much, taken out of their yield to make it worthwhile. That becomes a debate. But the idea of relying on Jump or other providers for centralized endpoints for the chain daemon information makes me a bit skittish for obvious reasons. Historically, this chain has always been designed and architected with the mentality of zero dependencies, and now we're creating our first dependency on some centralized entity of some kind. So to me, it's probably not. I mean, all you're doing in that circumstance is you're saying, instead of having nodes pay $3,000 per month to run the Solana infrastructure themselves, they're going to query, Jump. And so the question becomes, well, is it worth $3,000 for the added risk put to the network just so we can query Jump, for their data or whoever the provider is?
And just to be clear, that's not a risk to the protocol itself, and that's not a risk even. Well, it's a risk to the LPs of Solana, and that's about it, I think.
No. It's a risk to everybody. No, in that circumstance, what can theoretically happen is that Jump can create fake transactions of swapping to Bitcoin, swapping to ETH, swapping to Tether. You can drain all the assets out of the entire network. And that
no. You'd be able to drain all of the Rune out of the Solana pool by creating fake Solana swaps, and then you'd basically swap all the Solana in the pool into Rune, and then you'd swap all that Rune into Bitcoin. But I don't see how you can't fake a transaction on the Bitcoin network. You can't fake Bitcoin inflows.
but you have an infinite mint scenario where you basically can mint as much Solana Sol transactions as you want, and arbitrage will probably arbitrage back against you anyway. So unless we hold the
it'll
chain,
drain the rune pool from it'll drain the rune from the Solana pool, and that's it.
It wouldn't drain it because you have arbitrage bots that would arbitrage in the direction, because the price of Solana is actually not changing because we're actually not minting more tokens. We're creating fake ones. And so an arbitrage bot would trade in the reverse direction, picking up cheap Sol, right? And they would just, unless the chain halts or something like this happens, assuming that doesn't happen or whatever, then all the funds of the network will be lost.
I don't think that's true. I literally think that you would think about it. You are able to spoof a Solana swap. So you're able to say that this user swapped Solana into THORChain and takes Rune out. They're taking Rune out of what? They're taking Rune out of the Solana Rune pool. So yes, the arbitrageurs so what you've done now is you've pushed down, because they're essentially selling Solana, buying Rune. You've pushed down the price. What then someone would do is they would come buy Solana.
No, they
would sell Solana on a centralized exchange and then buy it back cheaper on THORChain, right?
Well, no, you could just dump Rune into that pool and you get a fuck ton of Solana relative to the Rune you put in. You'd arbitrage in the reverse direction. Whenever you're trading in one direction, arbitrage bots will do the reverse, right? So because arbitrage bots are going to arbitrage that pool, they're going to put the Rune back in, right? Yeah.
So, but I don't see how anyone other than the ARB or the LP in the Solana pool would lose in that scenario. I don't know how. I don't see how you can drain all the Bitcoin from the Bitcoin LP without spoofing a Bitcoin transaction.
Well, no, you would just. You're effectively taking out as much value from the Solana pool as you want in the value of Rune, in which arbitrage is putting the value back into that same pool. Once you have as much Rune as you want, you can extract as much assets of any pool you care to.
Let me draw it up and let me do an analysis on it. But I mean, you could be right, but I'm
just do your analysis, but include the idea of arbitrage. As long as you include the idea of arbitrage, then you'll see that I'm right.
Well, yeah. Okay. All right. I will. But okay. Assume for a moment that that's not true. Just on the grounds of just on let's just put that one aside. Put that in a little box. We'll get back to that. Let's just assume for a minute that that's not true, and we could find some way, either by an independent. I don't know. Let's put that aside for now. Just purely from a philosophical standpoint, because Solana is a centralized chain, does it matter if we have a centralized Bifrost implementation if it means that we could unlock the sixth largest chain by market cap and have no additional cost to nodes?
You're effectively saying with this kind of position that let's say the 100 nodes is $3,000 per node. Let's call it $300,000 per month. You are putting a price tag on the decentralization of the network at $300,000 per month. That's effectively what you're arguing for in this circumstance. It's not,
but I don't think it's the decentralization of the whole network. I think it's the decentralization of this one chain integration, which that chain happens to be a centralized chain in the first place. So why does it matter? If Jump Capital wanted to fuck over THORChain, they could literally just do it at the validator level anyway, and all of our daemons would be reporting that to all the Bifrost anyway, right?
In that circumstance, it's a little bit different, because in that circumstance, they would be minting themselves new Sol tokens and changing the supply of Sol, and hence changing the value. And then in result, what they're actually doing is just correcting the price on THORChain, which is what we would want to see hypothetically in that scenario otherwise, with the exception of ILP kind of paying out too much to people when they shouldn't be paid out. But that is a different scenario. Faking tokens is different than minting tokens on the chain, and the implications to THORChain are very different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we were able to come forward with proof that Jump Capital was basically spoofing data through their endpoints, transactions that never happened on the blockchain, that would the economic value of attacking THORChain, their reputational loss would be way, way greater as a result than, it's just like game theory doesn't make sense for that
Okay,
to
but
play out.
reputational loss is nothing. Like, who the fuck cares about reputation? Like, that's not the way you secure anything to a space. I mean, that's just centralization, which is obviously what this chain.
But that's what Solana cares most about, though. Like that's their whole thing. Like if they cared about decentralization, they would be a decentralized network. They obviously don't. They're still a very like attractive.
I'm sure if you ask the pool. I'm sure if you ask the community of Solana, is your chain centralized? Their answer will be no, it's decentralized. That's what they would think from their perspective, and whether or not you agree with that is, fair or not fair or whatever. But like, yeah. I'm not just because, like, the same thing with Polygon. Like, Polygon's highly centralized. It's just a multi-sig securing the entire thing. And do we want to go through add centralized aspects to our network and design just because Polygon is centralized? And my leaning is no.
But if I can prove that it only puts the LPs that are on that chain at risk, would you be open to it?
To be honest, no, because even in that circumstance, it still has ILP risk.
But then what if we did what I was saying before, which is that only certain pools get ILP protection?
Then that becomes a political argument within the community, and we are no longer a neutral chain. We should be, at least culturally speaking, I've always intended this to be a neutral system that is not. Doesn't have an idea of what is a good coin or bad coin, what's a shit coin, what's not a shit coin, outside the context of what is a threat to itself. And in this context, ILP can be a threat to itself. So we have to think about that more clearly.
Yeah. All right, definitely. Okay, that's interesting. Definitely some stuff to think about.
Yeah, thanks for asking the questions.
Yeah, no problem. I would love to get like Solana and Polygon. So I've just been trying to think about alternatives to,
but why not just do Solana the way we do everything else and just have nodes run it? Like, it's possible. I thought it was not possible. I was told that it was not possible according to one of these guys that you're talking about who are pulling data from, and ended up being not the actual case. It is possible to run Solana nodes on cloud providers like DigitalOcean and such. So we can do it. The question just becomes, is it economically worthwhile? And that's a question that node operators have to kind of debate and argue about.
Yeah. All right.
That's all I have.
Hi guys. Great conversation. Happy to be here. So my question was regards to Haven integration, but this conversation got interesting. Could I ask you to expand on this, like Solana integration being economically justified, that the $3,000 cost per month per node, and the revenue generated from it? Like, how should the community think about this kind of thing?
It's hard to think about because you're basically making a gamble of what you think the success of Solana will be. And so the way that I would think about it, and this is my 2 cents, and everybody can establish their own mechanism, is like, yes, Solana is a big chain in terms of its market cap, but do the people of the community around Solana give 2 shits about interacting with THORChain? And to this date, I have not seen a large outpouring from the Solana community to be added to THORChain, like I've seen on Dash, like I've seen on Haven, like I've seen even within the Radix community. And so like these other chains are more engaged, and they give me more confidence that if we were to add their chains, there'd be liquidity in the pools, there'd be tradings and swaps, not just within their pool, like the Dash pool, but also in the Bitcoin pool and other assets as well. But for Solana, like, I don't know, right? Like if what's his name? Is it Sergey, or what's the guy's name behind Solana? I can't remember his name right now, but like if he got behind it and started tweeting about it and like getting his community excited about this whole Solana thing and whatever, then I might change my perspective. But like for me right now, at least in the current moment, while Rune's price is in the bear market and it's worth only $2.50, which is relatively low, it's probably not worth it. But come the next bull market when Rune's, at new all-time highs, assumably, and all these things, and like, then the $3,000 we're talking about is pennies, and it doesn't actually really have that much effect on the reward or yield of node operators.
Actually, one point that I thought of is the people of Solana care about decentralization. They could just use a centralized bridge to go through, they're bridging from Solana.
You mean their bridge that got hacked and that they've poured hundreds of millions of dollars into? And that also only supports ETH right now. Like, imagine if we were like, yeah, we solved your bridging problem, but also like your, for BTC, ETH, like all these other tokens as well. I think they'd be pretty stoked about that.
They might be.
I just wanted to add.
I hope so.
I just wanted to add, though, I think that, I think there is a way to like quantify what like the value of a chain is. Of course, like you have to make some assumptions, like Chad was alluding to, like how much volume and swap volume is this going to bring? But like just saying, like leaving the price of Rune like constant or aside, like every time a swap happens, that basically like the income or the fees from that swap are split between the bonders, so the nodes and the LPs. And so basically you can determine like how much swap volume would be necessary, right? Because it's not just block rewards, like that base, because volume is pretty constant right now. Block rewards month over month for nodes have been relatively constant, like I think around 4,000 Rune per month. But like if there was a huge spike in volume, especially as a result of one chain being added, that would reflect in the node income, and you would see more income as a result. So even if the price of Rune did not change, if you were able to, we can solve for this equation. If we were able to generate X amount of volume from the Solana pool per month, that would actually cover the cost of the hardware. So there is actually a way to do sort of like to break down the cost benefit analysis of running the chain. But again, you still have to like make an assumption about how much volume it would bring, and that's something that I think none of us know.
Yeah, well, it's hard to know that, right? I mean, we had a Doge. Doge is about the same market cap as Solana right now, and obviously the amount of trade volume we see on Doge is not nearly as high as it is on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and even Atom I think is like outperforming Doge, even though Atom is like a fraction of the liquidity of Doge, right? That all comes into it. The same thing with like Bitcoin Cash and Litecoin, like all these things. Like their market caps are relatively high, but the community seems like a zombie community. Like they're not really aware what's happening. What we've done for those communities is probably the biggest thing that happened to them in years. And they don't even care. And that's just like shocking to me.
It's because Doge is a meme coin that like people just trade, they just trade it and they just hold it. They don't really give a shit. Like they just want it to moon. I think that Solana actually has use cases, and actually Solana actually has like traders and users and like people that have a bit more of like the DeFi mentality. So, and also like they have, they're like a, sort of like an institution, at least like Jump is an institution that Nine Realms could face. So I think that there's something that like we could do there in terms of like getting a really big liquidity slug. I think, I don't even know. We've never talked to them, but like, I think that there's like more opportunities for like us to do a partnership there. Whereas like Doge, there's not really like an entity to do a partnership with. So I think that it's just an interesting area to explore. I have to jump pretty soon, but I did want to ask one more question that I'm forgetting right now. So just give me 2 seconds.
While you're doing that, I want to thank you, Pluto, for all your questions, because I think it stirs up a lot of debate and design ideas. And my question to the Thor core here, I guess, is where does this governance happen? So if one of you guys address that, and to kind of answer the question that Kenton had earlier, there is a bare metal conversation that's been going on at Atom, the Cosmos Hub, for a while. And thanks to what's been recently happening on THORChain's debate between the cloud security versus the bare metal security, I kind of stirred the pot back into Atom people. And then I got pretty deep in with the bare metal people that's been doing it for years. So Kenton, if you're interested in this bridge or hybrid where the real bare metal people, the validators, are bringing on the investors, you might want to go and talk to them. And so my real question originally is to ask the Thor core here, when IBC? Because for Cosmos Network, which you guys are part of, with that IBC, which in my view is the greatest technology that Atom produced or Cosmos produced. I put it on the level with DAO, NFT, and XFi. XFi including DeFi, ReFi, GameFi, and all that stuff. It really is a tunnel, not a bridge. And I think that if I'm talking to Atom people, and they're very friendly, so you get to talk to the core people directly. So I've been nudging them to, in some ways, open up IBC as a non-branded protocol like TCP/IP, because the consensus and the assumption, well, it's a fact, right? That it's invented by the Tendermint core and the Cosmos core team. So it's a Cosmos branded tunnel. But I think if they could just make it brandless, it could be boundless. Like it could be TCP/IP.
Well, so let me answer your question. So IBC is a bridge to start because it is bridging assets across chain. You're locking up assets on one chain, then you're minting something else on another chain. That is by default or by definition a bridge. The idea of it being used to like do more than just value, but information as well, is something that I think is being discussed or being explored, part of interchain accounts and this kind of thing. I think the problem with that becomes there's no security involved at all, because the value of the transaction, of the information being transmitted is irrespective to the person that's transmitting it, right, from malicious activity. That's the problem I have with that. Same thing with the THOReau protocol. It's the same idea. Like there's no way to financially, there's no way to build that in a way that's economically secure. The only way you can do is through trust, which is inherently problematic from my perspective.
Yeah, I heard that.
Can I jump in? Can I jump in on this as well? Because I have to hop. So I'm just going to give my quick 2 cents on when IBC. I think the question for THORChain is more why IBC. I've given my thoughts on this before. Rune is okay. First of all, what assets would you want to export? There's only 2 types of assets on THORChain. There's native Rune and then there's synthetics. There could be a whole use case for reasons why you'd want to export synthetics. I'll let other people talk about that. But in terms of exporting native Rune, I don't believe that should be done, because Rune is most productive when it's either bonded or pooled in THORChain itself to, again, secure the assets of that facilitate all of the cross-chain swaps that THORChain does. So, like, personally, I don't think IBC needs to be used for Rune. Someone else can talk about synthetics, but I just think that like the Cosmos and the THORChain ecosystems can coexist and will coexist. Like obviously we're under that umbrella, but I'm just saying in terms of IBC, like DEX aggregators will solve the problem of like when to use IBC and when not to use IBC. So for example, like if you go into a Rango today and you want to get like USDC on Osmo chain or whatever, Osmo on Osmo chain, and you have Bitcoin, right? You'll just put in 1 Bitcoin and it will say, great, we're going to swap that 1 Bitcoin to Atom, and then we're going to use IBC to switch Atom on Cosmos Hub to Atom on Osmo, and then we're going to use Osmosis's pool to swap from Atom on Osmosis to native Osmosis, right? All of that will happen underneath the hood using DEX aggregators. There's literally no reason that we need to enable IBC to start exporting, our synthetic Atom and then like pushing, sending that over to Osmosis or Cosmos Hub. Like, let the different systems do what they do best. That's my two cents on it. I just don't believe that it's necessary for THORChain.
While we're here, just to again, I don't see IBC as a Cosmos or Atoms thing or Thor's thing. I see it as a universal infrastructure. That's all. And again, this is in the works in the version 2, version 3 of IBCs. It's a long game, guys. It's not whose bridge we're going to use. It's about easing the experience, users experience. And I love THORChain. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's one of the most unique project. But as a user, it's really cumbersome. You got to have 2 wallets. I mean, to bring the newbies onto this, which I've been trying to do for the last 6 years. THORChain is at a place to start, right? Osmosis is. So, like the Cosmos people, they would rather have IBC just be default, like back at, you don't think about it, it's just there, we're all connected, and then let's move forward. But if not IBC yet, because let's just say IBC from your perspective is not there yet, And so we'll give it a time. Not a big deal. And then I guess the secondary thing would be like on Rango, Osmosis is already integrated with the THORChain, right? So when does the Thor swap get integrated with the Osmos?
I think that would be a question for THORswap. They Osmosis is not integrated on THORChain right now, right? That's the beauty.
Isn't it on Rango?
Yeah, it's on Rango because again, you can use IBC to move from Atom, which is on THORChain, right? So like just by adding Cosmos Hub to THORChain, now you have access to the entire IBC ecosystem. So that's why it just like kind of annoys me when people are like, when is THORChain going to add IBC? It's like, well, why? We don't need to. We already have given the entire Cosmos IBC ecosystem access to L1 ETH and L1 Bitcoin and L1 everything else. Like, I get that it's a tool that people are very excited about and they want everyone to use it, but I don't see the use case for THORChain.
So you don't think IBC adds any usability or from the users? Like, let's not talk about like the bare metals, the validator. I mean, that's just too far in for obviously public or common users. So like, I'm trying to get people to get their freaking coins off of like Kraken and Coinbase first to start off with, right? Like, because they just keep it there. They don't interact with THORChain because it's just. They don't know about it, first of all. And
you'd rather them hold it on like Cosmos Hub via an IBC like representation as an IOU rather than as the L1, because I think that's kind of like antithetical to our philosophy.
No, I would, if it's up to me, I would rather have people hold their tokens on Ledger or Trezor. But that's, again, like fifth hold down for them. It's just like there's 5 ways to hold your token, five layers of security in a simplified way. And the Coinbase is the first step for majority of people, right? So I'm trying to get them to the second step. It doesn't matter if it's Kepler or Leap or Hammer Wallet. I'm trying to get them to own their own token. Like have their own seed phrase instead of trusting with Krakens and FTX or whatever. So like what you're talking about is for someone like us who's been in it for years, and for the core tech people here are gracious enough to be here to educate us further down the hole. But like I guess I'm mostly focused on educating and sharing and kind of trying to bring the masses on board, which really is what Web3 needs to grow up to be. We have no designers, no artistic talents. It's still run by devs, which are essentially engineers, and it shows because the user interface, user experience just sucks. It's like if I go to Cosmos, for example, and some of the graphics and some of the color tones, all these things are just like high school level, and so we need to bring world-class people into it, and you can't do that if we keep hammering people with beauty of do this, like too many hops, right? You need to eliminate hops, make it easy, simple.
So that's the point of DEX aggregation. And one of the reasons why it might be valuable to THORChain to add Osmosis as another chain to it is because then you would have direct access in a single transaction to trade from basically any asset on any chain to any asset on any chain without relying on swaps or multiple transactions or holding gas assets or any of these things. I think that's part of the vision, I think, that I would like to see happen is the THORChain room power.
And IBC is still helping facilitate that. I think that's what people are like fail to understand is that like IBC helps facilitate that. It is not part of the THORChain in that hop, right? THORChain facilitates the L1 swap and then passes it off to Osmosis to use IBC to connect you to whatever chain you want. I've said my piece.
Yeah. From the user's perspective, they don't care about IBC. They don't care about wormholes. They don't care about any of that stuff. So if putting Osmosis on THORswap makes it from so I bring people onto Osmo because they see the cartoon. They think it's hilarious. They think it's funny. Oh, like a couple steps, you're done. So you're in, right? So now like to pull people into DeFi to get them really experiencing what blockchain is really about, because on Coinbase, they don't send transfer. They just like buy and hold and get their shitty return that Coinbase gives them, which is not less than half. So, so I get people into Osmo because it's the far easiest in 6 years of my.
I think I lost him.
I think he just got rugged. Susan, you there? Like in the meantime, Con, you can go. Sorry for cutting you off before.
No, I was just going to say, like, I was just going to add on to Pluto's points that, like, basically THORchain is like the alternative. I see them as an alternative to IBC assets on THORChain, right? Like like THORChain could have integrated IBC. It could have like IBC IOUs on it. Instead, it prefers to do that as THORchain, which is like productive for LPs. So I really don't see merit in like a direct IBC integration either. But I would be very actually curious to explore like the advantages of adding like Osmo chain as like one of the chains, especially like given that they're like becoming this hub for Cosmos based assets.
Yeah, one interesting thing I kind of debate about adding Osmo or not is that assumingly the pool for Atom will be deeper than Osmo just because the market cap is that. Kind of insinuates that. And if that's the case, the swap fees would be less through Atom. And so it might be more effective in terms of like cost.
So Chad
got rugged.
Damn, this whole space is getting rugged. I can pretty much finish his thought. Like, basically with DEX aggregation, it'll choose whatever the cheapest path is. So like if the Atom pool is deeper, it's going to choose to use the Atom pool and then just use the IBC route that I described before, rather than use the osmosis pool. So like by virtue, I think just by virtue of having one IBC enabled chain, and that's the Cosmos hub, we basically give the entire ecosystem access to the L1 liquidity on THORChain via DEX aggregation. And so like, that's just kind of where my like frustration comes from, with the sort of Cosmos community, is because like, they keep like shouting, like when IBC, it's like, they won't give us any like props or any recognition until we enable IBC. It's like this invisible wall between us and the Cosmos community, where it's like, if you don't enable IBC, like you're not part of our community. And it's like, they don't even take 5 seconds to like sit down and like listen to like where we're coming from. And like, and to be honest, they haven't given any recognition. They haven't done like any like cross marketing. I haven't heard a word from any of their thought leaders about like how great it is that you can now go from like L1 BTC to literally any token in the entire Cosmos universe. And it's just like, I'm sorry. I'm sick of basically trying to explain it to them, and because they're not willing to understand. And rant.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, I totally agree and understand. Like, there's basically, like, to sum up, basically there are two ways IBC could have been beneficial. One, exporting assets. Two, importing assets. In exporting assets, it's just that Rune is basically more productive on THORChain than anywhere else. And in importing assets, it just makes sense to represent them as like synths instead of like IBC assets, because they add, like, they contribute to revenue of LPs.
And also like, and I'm a firm believer in like doing something unique and doing something that like other people haven't done already. And like Osmosis is the best place to pool IBC assets. Like, why would we try to compete with them on that? Like it's
on your DEX aggregation note, we're talking about the hypothetical protocol, right? That like,
no, this like, there's nothing hypothetical. Literally go onto rango.exchange right now and plug in, try to get a 1 BTC swap to Osmo on Osmosis. It will literally show you how the BTC swap goes from BTC to Atom to Cosmos Hub to Osmosis via IBC, and then does the Osmo swap to like whatever you want on Osmosis. It's already there today. This is already enabled.
I've totally did not know that. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So Pluto, for it to
no one in the community knows that, and because they don't sit down and like even like listen to us. It's very frustrating.
Love the rant, Pluto. For it to be single signature aggregation, does that not require Osmo in a pool? Like, can you do that with a contract on Cosmos?
No, because Cosmos Hub does not have CosmWasm enabled. So we would need to have like an aggregator contract, much like THORswap has, much like Rango has on Ethereum for ERC20s, much like AVAX will have once that goes live. We would need to essentially make like a transfer out and call contract on Osmosis, I already made a tweet thread like 2 months ago, basically explaining exactly what needs to happen in order to do the single transaction, like literally to be able to sign one transaction on Bitcoin to swap directly to any IBC asset. All that would need to happen is that we would need to create an Osmo pool on THORChain, and then Osmosis, because their smart contracts are permissioned, their community would need to essentially, we would need to create a proposal, a COSM-WASM proposal that essentially creates that smart contract on Osmosis that allows us to do the transfer out and call. I've detailed this many times. We've been saying this, so
I'm not entirely sure that's correct, because I think it's possible to do it with Atom as long as interchain accounts allows for it.
I have not explored the interchain accounts enough yet. Maybe you know.
So theoretically, how that works is you would swap to Atom on the Gaia chain, and then you would use interchain accounts to broadcast, like to move your Atom to the other chain, and then also execute some sort of transactional swap. And that's kind of the value of like interchain accounts, is being able to do a single transaction that actually executes a multitude of transactions across multiple chains within the Cosmos ecosystem. So that might be. I don't know if I'm not interchain accounts expert by any stretch of imagination, so I'm not 100% confident about it, but I think that's possible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we would be able to figure it out if someone from the Cosmos community would actually sit down with us. But when we talk to them, all we ever get from them is when IBC. So
I want to really quickly interject. I know it's not my turn real quick, but I came up to say, Pluto and everybody on the team, great work for fantastic work that you guys have done with THORChain. You guys obviously think outside the box. I think that's fantastic asset. And sometimes, the crowds, they get the crowd mentality and it happens, but keep doing what you're doing. 100% support. Love it. Just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Arno, the Dogecoin tip god.
Wow. Thank you.
Awesome, guys. Really, really great debate and discussion today. I really enjoyed dropping in for this one. I got to drop off right now, but yeah. Cheers to everyone. Have a great weekend.
Later, Pluto.
Thanks for coming up.
Any more questions or things you want to bring up? That was a good roundabout of a good conversation. Interesting, engaged. I like it. Anything else you want to bring up or discuss?
One technical question from me. Given the low market cap of Haven, one of the things that came up in the Discord server was like the concern with potential reorgs. I know like confirmations on THORChain sort of take into account the economic value of the transaction, but maybe worth reiterating like how that kind of works and how THORChain can be secure against such things.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think everybody's kind of heard about the idea that like you wait 6 comps for Bitcoin, right? It's a common kind of adage that people have said, and exchanges themselves use that. There was a white paper or like a research paper that was written in 2012 by, I think his name is Ropstein, or I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he's the one that kind of came up with this idea of 6 comps. And if you read the actual document and kind of get a sense of his language, like he's like, some number, it's about 6 sounds good, I guess. Like that's pretty good. Like, and that's especially in 2012 levels when everything was different, right? So the way we think about comps in the community in general, I feel is highly flawed. It should be relational to the amount of value that you're trying to extract through the network. And so therefore should be dynamic. And so how THORChain actually does it is it looks at the block size, the block reward of Bitcoin or Haven or what have you, and it establishes what the value of that is. And so if the block reward is like, say it's $100,000 and there's a transaction coming through that's $200,000, then it'll wait 2 blocks for confirmation before it actually accepted it. And it also includes like multiple transactions. So if there's 3 transactions, each are $100,000 each, then the lot of them will be weighted, will be delayed for 3 confirmations before it actually, is observed and processed and so forth and so on. And so this is part of the same thing will happen for Haven, is that it'll be a lot of confirmations to be waiting for, before trades actually go through, especially ones with decent size. Because the confirmations of the block reward for Haven is rather small, the number of confirmations will probably be fairly high, just to ensure that the network is secure and it can't be attacked by a reorg attack or something like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah. Overall, I just want to also add that Haven integration, as much as it's a low market cap chain and everything, I just think it's it sets a direction for the network and truly gives me goosebumps. So I'm pretty happy with all the engagement and interest around it. I think the rest of the rest of the crypto market sort of don't recognize this at the moment, but it'll surely become a point where it's it shows that how beneficial such that integration will be in the future, I think.
I think it really highlights the fact that we're the only DEX that can possibly even support this integration, because no one else can even have this conversation, right? Any other DEX, it's complete non-starter. It doesn't even, you can't even start to have the conversation. But I think it's really interesting that there's so much activity on this discussion here, because it's possible because of what THORChain brings to the space.
Yeah, it's not only just that, but every DEX that's currently being developed, with the exceptions of ones that are forks of THORChain, cannot accept it or cannot support something like a Monero. Even Chainflip can't even do it, right? Because they require Schnorr signatures to be able to interact with a chain, which, to my knowledge, Monero does not actually support. So we would be we're literally the only ones that can, and there's nothing even in development right now, at least to my knowledge, that can theoretically even support it. So
another maybe opinion that I would like to have is the adoption around DEX integration. To me, it's quite clear that there's a huge use case for it, and my expectation is that as DEX DEX aggregations get more and more adopted, then essentially what THORChain is what's going to become important for THORChain is to have high liquid pools, and that's it, right? So earlier to the point that we've discussed, whether or not we should integrate Osmo, now the decision becomes we only need one large pool to access all of these Cosmos IBC assets. So if that's Atom, maybe it doesn't matter if it's not worth adding Osmo there and stuff like that. So on that note, now the question becomes what happens to currently listed assets, small assets, ERC20s and other assets out there. So yeah, we'll be curious to hear your thoughts on how to handle those, whether they would stay, they would get delisted somehow, or what's the timeline looking like for those?
In terms of ERC20s being delisted from THORChain, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think if DEX aggregation picks up, I don't see much value in them staying on THORChain.
Well, the only ones that do kind of have value is the stables. They actually become basically price feeds in some sense into the THORChain environment, which can be very helpful. But I agree with you. I think ERC20s in general will probably be kind of going away, with the exception of stables on THORChain. There was even a recent code change in the latest version that just got adopted recently that allowed nodes to demote pools based upon trade volume. If you haven't got enough trade volume to be worthwhile to even secure the assets that we're securing for you, then we're going to delist your token, basically your ERC20 from the network. That doesn't apply to gas assets, primary assets of primary chains. It only applies to secondary assets. But I think what's naturally probably going to happen is either we're going to get rid of all ERC20s or all ERC20s with the exception of stables, and just become very short tail assets and become the corridor between every DEX in the world, and then have those DEX do the long tail of various assets.
Yeah, I see this as almost a part of the soul searching of THORChain, but I definitely stables should stay there, I think. But if those ERC20s get delisted, it becomes more clear where the unique edge of THORChain is. And it's like, I think it's a clear narrative to be this like highway between chains, basically. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I think initially the idea in the earlier days was that THORChain would just hold all the assets and make everything else, redundant. And then as we launched it and we made some learnings, we kind of realized that scaling the bond would be harder than we probably initially thought it was going to be. And how can we have really deep Bitcoin pool if we have 1,000 coins that are taking up some of that space in the security? And so it became more and more obvious as the multi-chain was launched and more assets were added and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's where I flipped to after multi-chain. Started to think myself that we should probably just let local dexes handle local assets and THORChain handle remote access.
I wasn't a bit aware of any THORChain forks, but Chad, if you were to leave in a few years, as you dream to, what would be the value add propositions or unique things that forked THORChains could do differently from current THORChain? Would that be? I don't know. I as an architect, I'm mostly interested personally as a design aspects of what is possible. So if you could shed some ideations on what other THORChain mods could be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of two in this moment, but to my knowledge, one is called Maya, and their proposition is not much different than what THORChain already does. I think they're just going for like LP units is the bond security instead of the native Cocoa asset, and they were more fixated on supporting the THORChain system as a secondary option or network. There's another one that I'm aware of that I won't say the name of the chain because I don't think it's public quite yet, but they're working on a stablecoin design and having the stablecoin be the base asset of the network, where you bond with those stablecoin and you also put stablecoin into the pools. That inherently is highly flawed and problematic, which I'm not going to get into right now. And there's a good reason why we would never want to do that. But for me, like, I think what may happen, and I think this is part of the conversation that I'd like to have with the community at some point in the future, is the idea that because people are a bit unsteady about like THORFi and the algo stable design and these other aspects to it, there's a part of me that thinks that maybe the right move here is to fork THORChain and have the current THORChain just kind of remain being just an AMM, rock solid, secure, stable, like all these things. And then we fork THORChain and create a new thing with a new brand and a new name, new everything, new asset. And that becomes like more of the experimental, bleeding edge, higher risk kind of system, so that we can experiment with these ideas that are highly valuable, conceptually, and we can experiment them in a way that does not threaten THORChain itself. Like, if the algo stable collapses, blah, blah, hypothetically speaking, and we don't want to destroy THORChain with it, we can just destroy this, secondary forked network. That's something that like myself and other OGs have been kind of considering or talking about. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not happen. I'm not saying that it will, but the idea is that there's more things we want to do as the original architects of THORChain, and we don't want to put what we've worked so hard to build over the course of 3 or 4 years at risk, but still be able to experiment and provide these new DeFi protocols that are leaps and can agree with me on this. I think that are leaps and bounds ahead of everything else in the space. Like our lending design is ridiculous. And so it's too important to just leave it aside and not do anything and just kind of shelve it. But at the same time, we don't want to put THORChain itself at any kind of risk with this new kind of bleeding edge experimental concept. And so that's going to be a conversation that the community might have at some point once we get past these 3 major features of POL, single-sided yield, and order books, is get back to the THORFi conversation is, do we want THORFi to be part of THORChain and build it in, which we can totally do that if the community wants to go in that direction? Or do we want to fork THORChain, create a secondary chain that does all that stuff and allows it to be experimental in another way that doesn't threaten the original chain. That's going to be an interesting conversation that the community is going to have to like discuss and argue about and figure out what's the direction we want to go as a community.
So what I'm hearing is that I'm all for it. Whether you put 9 realms or the community decides THOR5 belongs on the new one or the current one, that's up to the community and the 9 realms and you guys. And either way, I think I'm excited for it. So essentially, you're talking about creating a crazy cousin like Kusama to Polkadot and Juno to Atom, which allows more experimentation without losing stability or security of the core, right? So, and I think this is a debate that's going on in other blockchains as well. But the architecture of the THORChain being primarily DeFi, I guess the DNA doesn't allow for it to become, say, smart contract chain or DAO or NFT, or I guess I'm looking at things beyond DeFi. Like, I don't know if your life after THORChain is beyond DeFi or it's something to do with DeFi. I guess that was my question.
Yeah, I mean, there are 3 things that I have in mind that I really want to work on. I can't work on them all at once, obviously. I'm actually meeting with somebody actually coming down to New York next week to collaborate on something, which that'll be come out later on. But like, there are things I want to build, and the other things I want to build outside of THORChain and THORFi are actually not in DeFi, but they're still are satisfying or solving significant issues or problems in the space, that things that need to be solved, that somebody has to solve them, inarguably so. And so those are problems the ones I like to go after, ones that actually have real value and purpose. So I do have more ideas and things I want to build, which I'm probably going to start working on this year, later on.
Yeah, personally for me, I've been interested. When I discovered NFT in 2017, I basically closed down my business that I ran for 20 plus years at that point, because I knew that was the tech that could bridge physical world with the digital world. And I sought out to hire a software company in India for $500,000. Like all that would have been bad idea, and it would have been a terrible idea for me to learn code at that time as a physical architect into a digital architect, because what I would have learned would have been Solidity, which would have been terrible. So like, my goal is really long term. Like, I align my views with the Long Now Foundation, with Stuart Brand and all those people. And so physical bridge to digital bridge is going to take decades, and I know that. And so as Vitalik and visionary people like that talks about digital cities, they don't know anything about architecture or infrastructure or urban planning of the real physical world. So like, the real estate is the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion, and everything really is a asset, right? Like human capital is an asset. Unfortunately, it's captured by capitalists, not the community values of socialism. And so, as we bridge both social values and capital values, and and that's, I guess, a simple word is a tokenization. I'm really interested in things beyond DeFi and things beyond a current kind of trading and swapping and all that kind of that makes people drive so narrowly. Like, I want us to connect the bridge to the real world, the physical world. And other than NFT, if you have any ideas as a tech module that could bridge that, and this is why I follow you guys.
Thank you, sir. I think I can't remember his name. SN50. I don't think you have a question you want to ask. You haven't had the opportunity to ask yet.
Yeah, hi guys. So the name, by the way, is a big brain test. So well, I'll let people think about it. But no, my question. Sorry, you might have answered it before, Chad, because I'm doing some stuff as I'm listening to you. I hope I didn't miss if you answered that question. But I was wondering regarding exactly what you guys were talking now, actually. So when you guys were talking about forking the chain and making supporting THORChain, sorry, and making something more experimental. I think I asked that question on Twitter. Is it realistic to, or even did you guys even thought about that? If would that chain be possible to be done via like either like wrapping or completely minting a like just a completely different token to dissociate the name out of THORChain, but it would still be basically originating from THORChain and do another separate chain based on the minting of that token. So basically you can spin up new nodes based on that. But so the point is to minimize like just the whole new capital dilution by starting a new token, a new coin starting from zero. So it would still basically belong to THORChain, but it would just be done separately with a different identity. Yeah, I don't know if you follow me.
The way that I've looked at it is that it would be a fork of the code and not a fork of the data, right? Not like Bitcoin Cash was a fork of the code and the fork of the data. And it'd be its own new asset with a new name and new everything. And then there would probably be an airdrop to rune holders to if you have 500 rune in your wallet, you would get 500 tokens in an airdrop, and then you can start engaging on the other chain as well and doing what you want to do, whatever. That's hypothetically. But then again, I haven't really spent all that much time designing or thinking about it, just because it's more important to focus on these like last big features and that kind of stuff. But I'll probably turn right back to it later on and think more about whether or not something we want to do or not.
Yeah, no, I get you totally. So yeah, I guess that's the one way to do it too. Is what I was thinking about is like when we used to basically you guys like had to burn or I guess mint the new native token base out of the old wrap. Well, they're not wrap the native. Well, not native. Sorry, the IOU initial THORChain rune tokens. So like what I was envisioning is, would it be possible to like open a new gate, but that would be possible to mint and redeem actually. So you would be able to go back and forth, but then that way you create a new chain. But yeah, that's just another way to think about it. No, do you follow what I'm saying there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I would see it. I mean, and I'm open to changing, because I haven't thought about that much. But like, I would see it just as two rune and this other rune fork thing would just be two floating assets, just the same as what cacao is and rune is today. It wouldn't be as much burning rune to mint like rune V2 thing or whatever you want to call it, or vice versa. It would just be two free floating assets that you can choose to buy or sell at will.
Yeah. It's just trying to say, the point of that would be to segregate risk for people who are afraid of, having any sanction put. So that would separate that completely. But yeah, it's a pickle there. I like them both. So, but thanks for your answer.
No worries.
Cool. Thanks for coming up. No more requests. So I think this would be a good place to wrap up, but definitely a fun conversation today. And actually one last request just came in. We can give him a quick chance. And then this will be the last one. Shift control. I'm seeing an error adding you actually. What's going on here?
I feel like Twitter's been weird today, the spaces.
Yeah. Maybe it was all those special effects sounds.
They broke everything.
Yeah. All right. We'll just wrap it up. Yeah. This was a great one though. Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for all your time, Chad. It was great having Pluto come up and lots of good questions today, and so many things shipping, so many things upcoming, and like a lot of good debates to be having. So people can check out the recording. Recording will be up on Runebase, and yeah, we'll do this again next Friday.
Later, guys. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.